Hey everyone, welcome to Sequence of Instructions. Thanks for joining me. In this video we're going to hack together a little varying size chess project. I first hacked this together a couple weeks back. I was reading an article about the queens puzzle. There's this 8 queens problem in chess that goes, could you put 8 queens on the board such that no queen is threatening any other queen? And that's been solved. I think there's 90 some odd ways to do it. But the article I was reading was about a larger, more general question of, are you able to do it? Does the rule of being able to put 8 queens on a board apply to any a chessboard of any size, excuse me. So if you had a 100 by 100 size chessboard, could you put 100 queens on it, such that none of them are threatening each other? And as far as I know, I don't think that's been solved. I, for whatever reason, thought I might have had a solution, so I hacked together this little project to let me make a chessboard of varying size and let me put queens on it, just to play around with a couple ideas. If you're wondering, I did not have a solution to it. The pattern I thought worked didn't necessarily work for any size chessboard, but it was still a fun little project anyway, and so we're going to spend a day and build it. If you'd like to follow along, again, I'm on jsfiddle.net. The first thing we're going to be doing here is loading Jquery. Jquery just makes it a little easier for us to select DOM elements and stuff. So I have this Jquery CDN hosted by Google. I'll paste the link to it in the description of this video if you want to use it. Just click add. Alright, it's in there. Next thing we're going to be doing is, alright, so most of this stuff is, most of the code we're going to be writing is going to be JavaScript and CSS, but we are going to need a container in which to keep the board. So we'll call this chessboard. Just make an ID with chessboard. In there we'll put all the squares that we want. And that's really all of our HTML for the rest of this project. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come down to JavaScript. I'm writing a onReady function. This is, again, jQuery. It's just saying when the document is ready, do some stuff. This guarantees that if you select any elements, they'll definitely be loaded by that time. If you don't have this, it's possible if you try and select elements that the browser is running your JavaScript before the page is fully loaded, in which case your element that you're trying to select may not exist. So it's always best if doing any DOM manipulation to ensure it's only called after the document is ready. Alright, first thing we're going to do, let's just grab a reference to our board. So again, let me get that mouse out of the way. I'm using jQuery to select my chessboard element. This hashtag says select by ID. What's the ID of the element I'm selecting? Chessboard. That's it. So this will now give me a jQuery element representing this chessboard. By convention, I like to start my jQuery element variables with a $, because jQuery is notoriously known as the $. But you don't have to do that. You can just call it board if you want. Alright, so I select my board. The next thing I'm going to want to do is I want to know how big of a board we're making this time. So I'm going to prompt the user to tell me. Say, how big is the board? Question mark. And I'm expecting the user to put in a number between 1 and whatever, and that will be the number of squares on one side of the board. So a regular chessboard, how big is the board? The answer would be 8. 8 by 8 is the dimensions. So that's kind of how my code's going to work from here on out. Alright, the next thing we want to do is start creating our chess squares, the little squares on the board. And for that, we're going to basically just run a loop as many times as the user said, that's not how you spell dimensions, as many times as the user said the dimensions were. So if the user said 8, we want to run this loop 8 times. So start at 0, go until, as long as we're less than the number of dimensions, and each time we're going to increment 1. So this will go 0 through 7. And that's basically going to be how many rows we want our chessboard to have. So here, let's make, for each iteration of this loop, we're going to make a new row. This is saying jQuery, make me a new div. It's going to give me back a jQuery object. So again, I have this $sign to indicate that. So now we have a row. And for each row, we want each row to have dimension number of squares. So we're going to duplicate this loop again, right? So we want, let's say dimensions is 8. We want 8 rows, and each row we want 8 squares in that row. So you see we have these nested loops, and if you saw any of our other videos, maybe the one on bubble sort, you may know that nested loops we'll run n squared times. So here n is 8. 8 squared is 64. That's how many squares on a chessboard. We can be pretty sure that we're doing it right. Alright, so this one we're setting j. It's a different counter. Make sure this also says j. And j is going to run separate from I. And each time we run through a j, we're going to be making a new square. This is going to look very similar to the new row. This one's a square. And the last thing we're going to do is each square is going to get added to the row. So whatever row we're on, every square is going to get added to it. And then after we've added all of our squares, we're going to add our row to the entire board. Alright, so append, again, this is a jQuery function that just makes inserting elements easier. Append just takes whatever element you give it and puts it as a child to the element you're calling it on. So in this case, it would be kind of like this. It would be your row. You'd have all these. Whoops. Each one of these is a square, 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 right? This is a row appended inside the board. That's kind of how the hierarchy is going to look. But you'll see, if I do this a few times, all these divs sort of look the same, and there's no real way to distinguish them. So what we need to do is give them some classes. And these classes are going to help us stylize them to make sure that the end result board that we create actually looks like a chessboard instead of just nothing. Because if you see we run it right now, 4, you don't really see anything. You have to take me at my word that they're in there. They're just completely invisible. So what we want to do is give them some classes. So let's give the row a row class, and let's give each square a square class. That's pretty straightforward, right? So we make a square, give it the class square, append it to the row. Make a row, give it the class row. At the end of this, append it to the body. That's the board. That's basically how this is going to work. And now if we run it, let's say 4. Let's prove that something is in here. All right, here's my HTML. Here's my body. Nothing is in here. I don't believe you. I believe something is in there. Let's look through this again. Row. Do I have to? Yeah, this should work. Board.append row. It's telling me nothing's in here. I don't think I believe that. In fact, I can't believe that. This should be working. HTML body board. Maybe JS Fiddle has a weird thing where it doesn't. Oh, square. I have a typo. Who saw this? Who saw that typo before I did? Anybody see it? You're a better man or woman than I. Alright, now that we got it fixed, let's see. I ran it again. Let's see if it works. Never blame JS Fiddle for your own problems. There they are. Alright, so we got all these rows, and each row has a bunch of squares, which is nice. But again, nothing's showing because they're not stylized. So let's close this. Let's throw some styles in here. Start with our square. I want each square to be 4 wide and 4 tall. Those numbers should match. That's what a square is. To start, let's just give it a background of gray. And then I want them to line up next to each other in a single row. The squares have to be to the left and right of one another. So we're going to float them to the left. So rather divs want to stack vertically normally, we're just going to float them left so they stack horizontally. And now row needs a style here. Row, we're going to make a pseudo element afterwards. If you're not really familiar with what these are, I can explain it. Basically, I want to clear. Floating has some caveats whereby floated elements don't have a height until you clear the float context. And so it's convention that the container holding a bunch of floated elements should clear after whatever comes after. So after this is a pseudo selector, it's going to put a pseudo element in, and that element is going to display block and clear so that our floated squares can pass a height along to the row. Alright, so let's run this now. I'm going to do 4. We'll do 4 again. There it is. So we have our 4x4 chessboard. 1, 2, 3, 4 squares. There's a row for you. 1, 2, 3, 4 rows. And each row, as you can see, has 4 squares in it. So we're on a good path here. But you'll notice this doesn't really look like a chessboard. In fact, it looks more like just a big gray blob. And if I hadn't inspected this element to you, you might actually think, no, that's just a big gray blob. So let's give it some character. Let's make it have the alternating checkerboard pattern that we like, that we expect from our chessboards. So what I'll do is I'll say we'll have another class here. So if you're a black square, we'll give some squares the black key, or I'm sorry, the black class. And if you're a black square, your background's going to be black. So this is going to override this original style. This gray style is going to be overridden. And squares, elements with the square and black class are going to have black backgrounds. As opposed to elements just with the square class, they're going to have gray backgrounds. Alright, so this is going to override it. Now the question becomes, how do we know which squares should be black? Well, I'll show you what I did when I first did this. I said, alright, I'm going to do an if. Basically, black's going to alternate yes, no, black, not black, black, not black. That's how, in a single row, that's what it's going to do. So what I did was I said, alright, well, if j is even, this is a modulo operator, basically says, give me the remainder after dividing. So if j evenly divides 2, this becomes a 0. 0 is false, doesn't go in here. If j does not evenly divide 2, if it's an odd number, then this is going to become a 1, because you're, let's say 3 divided by 2 is 3 divided by 2 is 1 with a 1 remainder, so this would be a 1. 1 is true, it would go into this if. So if it's odd, is basically what I'm saying here, I'm going to add the class black. Alright, this is what I did at first, when I first did this project. And you'll see it kind of works, but not quite. So this first row looks good. It alternates white, black, perfect. The next row does the same thing. It alternates white, black. And so we don't get that checkerboard pattern. We just get these streaks. So I thought for a second, I said, how do I reverse this, the oddness of this equation based on the row? And it came to me that I should be adding I to it. And now you see why it's important to do this in 2 loops. Not only to break it up by row, but also to let you switch the odd evenness of your if condition here. And so first time through, I is going to be 0. 0 plus j is not going to affect whether it's odd or even. Next time through, I is going to be 1, which means if this would have been even, it will now be odd, and if it was odd, it would now be even. And then it goes back to 2. So while j is fluctuating between odd and even, I is also fluctuating between I and even. And so those two powers combined, if you will, give you this nice checkerboard pattern. And there it is. Wowee. And if those of you who are chess sticklers, yes, my lower right square here is white. If you did it the other way, you could flip this board by just doing not here. So if that's not true, you'll see the pattern's gonna, whoops, I need one more. Oh my gosh, Jay's Fiddle, you're trying to be helpful and you're not helpful at all. You'll see now the lower right square is black. So you can control kind of the order of the pattern if you'd like. This is the way I like it. Alright, let's do one more. We'll do 2 more cool things. One, I have these, I think black and gray is kind of gross. I had pre-picked out these Neato colors. I think make the board look a little bit prettier. Let's see a full 8x8 board. There it is. So that's a little bit prettier of a board. Let's do one last thing. I said I made this project for that Queens puzzle because it let me make a board of a varying size, but then once I have the board, I need to be able to put queens on and take them off, right? So the last thing we're going to do is we're going to put a little click handler on here. And we're going to say, after we make our square and give it our class, after we give it both of our classes, we're then going to say, we're going to bind a click handler to it. So on click, we're going to do what? we're going to say toggle queen. So I'm giving it some function, so now I have to declare this function up here, function toggle queen. The context is going to be the element. So I'm going to say this dot toggle class queen. All right, so the first time you click a square, it's not going to have the class queen, so toggle class is going to add the class. The next time you click it, it's going to call the same function. It's going to check, do I have the class? Yes, I do. It's going to then remove the class. So clicking it will add or remove the class queen from a square. Last thing we need to do here, well, first let's make sure that this works. We'll do 4 again. So I'm going to inspect this. Now we should see when I click it, it should get the class queen. Toggle queen, square.click, toggle queen. It hates me. It hates me for so many reasons. Toggle class is not a function. Oh, I think I have to... It gives you the context is the actual element, so you need to wrap it in a Jquery selector, I believe. Let's see. Let me inspect this element. Yeah. Okay. So I kind of skimmed through that really quick. Basically, Jquery, the context the context of the function it calls when you call a click is going to be a normal DOM element, which doesn't have these helpful Jquery functions. So we convert it into a Jquery object first. That's basically all it says. It says, yep, I know this is a DOM element, or this is a DOM element. I want you to make this a Jquery element, and then I want you to call toggle class on it. All right, so you'll see as I click these, they either get or remove the class queen, which is exactly what we want. The last step here is to stylize our queen class. So any square, not dot class, dot queen. Any square that has the class queen is now going to have its own pseudo selector. And its own pseudo selector is going to be, let's make it a big Q for queen. We'll go, let's do this. Let's make it centered. Let's get a big queen. We're going to give it a font size of, geez, I don't know, 3M maybe. It's probably going to want a little bit of padding top, but we'll have to figure that out later. Yeah, let's just see how this looks. I'm just kind of eyeballing this. We'll see if this looks all right. That actually looks pretty good. So there you have it. Wow, I thought I was going to have to mess around with this more. 3Ms was the way to go. So you'll see as I click one, I can put a queen on the board. In this 3x3 square, I'm not even sure if you can put 3 on. No, it doesn't look like you can put 3 on without threatening them. But let me show you a solution to the 8x8 since I have your undivided attention at the moment. So here's our board, pretty neat. I found that you can solve this, whoops, by making knight style movements. Knight style movements over here. You then come up here, over one, you make similar knight style movements. Is this right? So far so good. Now I have just one more I have to place. I'm thinking I messed this up. Okay, I think I figured it out. I remember the pattern I thought was going to work was these knight moves. And they didn't obviously work, and I even forgot what it was. So it took me a while, but I figured it out again. It's these sort of like knight moves, so it's like a knight move, and then here's a knight move. And you can imagine these four, this mini triangle, this is almost like a mini knight move in itself. Or sorry, that comprise a larger macro knight move, kind of flipped and rotated over here. So now it goes like this. No, here. 1, 2, 3. This one. There it is. So this is a solution. You'll see I got every row or every column has a queen. Every row has a queen. I'm not sure if that's, yeah, so that means that none of them are threatening each other, and then each of these diagonals, no queen is attacking any other queen. Anyway, there you have it. I challenge you all to solve it for this sized chessboard. Oh, why does it look like that? There you go. So you can play around with this. That's my video. Hope you got something out of it. Let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll see you all next time. Take care. Bye.